that I think is important to understand in order to print on fabric effectively. Printing on soft textile requires quite a bit of understanding of soft textiles, and fabrics are different. They have different characteristics, they're constructed differently, and many of them have real important differences, and one of those big differences is it coated or is it uncoated? So what I'm going to discuss a little bit today is the difference between an uncoated, what we call a soft uncoated fabric. Sometimes people refer to them as a dye sub fabric, and a coated fabric, and the different approaches to the two medias. Now the first one I'm going to talk about, my friend here, the ugly dog, is a soft uncoated fabric or a soft uncoated textile. This has no specialty coating. This is widely used in the dye sublimation industry. This is an HP product. This is new. It's very nice. It's an HP light fabric. Prints beautiful. Probably falls under a category of poplin. This is what most people think of, or what we generally think of when we talk about printing on fabric with a latex printer. And one of its big virtues is that it can print on this type of uncoated fabric. You know, it's really the only other types of technology that print on uncoated fabric is dye sublimation. And the latex printer, this generation in particular, prints with the richness and saturation and clarity that sublimation does. Now, I don't have the full scratch and scuff resistance that sublimation does, but it's still more than sufficient for most applications that you would do for, say, a trade show. This material you would traditionally use the ink collectors, but you don't necessarily have to use them. Kind of your test is, if you hold this up to the light and there's no pinholes, then for the most part, some of the weaves of an uncoated fabric will prevent any ink from going through, and then you're pretty much good to go. Even if the pinholes are very light, you might get away with printing it without the ink collectors. So there are some materials, some fabrics that print just fine without using the add-on ink collector because it's not really necessary. This material would print just fine on a 330, for example, or a 310 without using the ink collector. Now you might get a residual amount of ink through on a long roll that will get on the platen. And that's simple. Just get a cotton cloth and some good isopropyl alcohol and clean off the platen. It's fairly easy. This is a real versatile fabric. It prints well. You could print it probably with or without the ink collectors, and it is an uncoated, soft textile. Most textiles I do recommend to put on the take-up roll. Now there are classes of soft textiles and fabrics that you can print directly on while it's running, and you don't necessarily have to use the take-up roll. But the take-up roll is very helpful to add the tension that fabric needs to travel through the print path properly. This material might work okay, or it might go through the printer without the take-up roll, but some people put a little weight on the front of it or something else to try to give it tension on the front. This is a very good and illustrative choice of soft, uncoated textile, and there are probably 70 of them on the media locator from all different companies. You know, there's Fisher and Aurora and Haytex and Berger and Giorginato Friedrich and HP. These are soft textiles. This is what most people think of when they print with latex. But there's also another category. Let me show it to you. This media, this is particularly made by Berger. It's called Samba. This is coated textile. So if you feel the front of it, it has kind of a little bit of a sticky coating to it. There are several reasons for the sticky coating. The sticky coating will allow you to put a little less ink at a faster speed and still get a very nice print. This also is very good for things like, say, hanging banners. Also, if you notice, there's really no fraying to it, so it cuts very nicely even with a rotary cutter. Now, a coated material, sometimes called an airtight material, those are good choices also for the 310 and 330, which do not have the ink collectors, because usually if it has a coating on it, no ink gets through the fabric and it sits on top. With uncoated fabrics, generally speaking, I'm going to run at 16 pass, somewhere between 175% and 230% ink. I have to slow it down a little bit because you're putting more ink down on the surface in order to get the saturation in the color pot. But with a lot of coated fabrics, I can run faster, sometimes 12 pass, with 150 or 175% ink and get a beautiful print because the coating is actually helping me get a really nice deep resonance with the color and the saturation. Now this particular product does not run well at all when you put these ink collectors in, because what happens is it actually kind of dips down into the ink collector and it doesn't allow it to lay nice and flat across the print platen. You'll get sort of elongated text from it. So I found that with the Samba and materials similar to this, two things are true. One, you're going to have to use the take-up reel because you need to have tension on this thinner material or it's just going to fall or fold right on itself while it prints. Also, it'll print better actually with the regular platens and putting the ink collectors in. So this type of coated, soft, thin fabric, it prints beautiful, it prints at high speeds, it has great color resonance, but there's a few characteristics of it to be aware of, and one of them is it really does need a take-up roll, and then the second is it's going to print better with the regular flat platens in as opposed to the ink collector platens. Coated fabrics are widely used for things like hanging banners, kind of pole banners that you would see indoor, those kind of things. Also a lot of roll-up banners, they may use a coated fabric. Coated fabric is more designed, I would say, to be put up and left up, because the coating can tend to crease or spider if you really work at it. Also, you'll notice a lot of backlit fabrics, soft backlit fabrics, they tend to be coated, because in order to print an effective backlit fabric, you got to put quite a bit of ink down. You really need that rich saturation, and the coating is going to assist with that amount of saturation. The great part about coating is the pop and the color you get. The drawback is the coating itself can be a little sensitive or a little crease prone. It'll tend to spider from time to time. It's probably not something you would want to crunch up and stuff into a bag like some of the softer uncoated fabrics, which would be better choices for that. So just wanted to give a general overview of uncoated and coated fabrics